Thanks for joining today. So we're at part 3 of our Reviewing Smart Contracts Using AI series. So in part 1, we used AI to help build a smart contract environment and explored what the tools can do. In part 2, we put that environment to use and reviewed an ERC20 contract and used AI to help explain what was happening in the code. And then today, in part 3, we took a vote or a poll among our community, and we're going to take the same approach, but we're going to apply it to a swap contract. So we'll walk through the code live and see how AI can help us understand how it works and also what its limitations are. So this is not a recommendation that if you have AI, you are suddenly an expert in smart contracts and should deploy random things. This is a guide to understanding a little bit more about it and determining what you can learn using AI. None of us are experts just because we can use AI to help us understand something. So I'm Jessica Levesque. I'm the executive director at C4, and we've got some of our CEP committee members here today. So let's do some intros. Dustin, do you want to start?
Hi, I'm Dustin. I'm based in Singapore and I run a Singapore-based nonprofit Ethereum community.
Lovely. Sonal?
Hey everyone, I'm Sonal and I'm based in Austin, Texas, and I run a startup in the Ethereum ecosystem.
And Josh.
Hi, Josh McDougall. I am one of the founding members of C4, but been on the CEP committee specifically since its inception as well. And I get to make Web3 games in my day-to-day life.
Is it fun when everyone loves what they're doing? What a cool gift that Web3 brings us. Not that there's no, drama, especially if you're in the Ethereum world of, I was going to say of late, but probably just in general. But we've got this amazing tool. Well, we've got this incredible blockchain technology. Then we've got this amazing tool, these amazing tools we can use with it, including smart contracts, which is pretty important to Ethereum. As I'm explaining that, I'm thinking, well, it's a little bit more than just a tool. So smart contracts are kind of essential to Ethereum, and they're used everywhere, but a lot of people don't understand that much about them. So we've done a couple streams where we've used AI to review them, and we're on our 3rd installment. So should we start by explaining what swap contracts are, or where do we want to start? What makes sense, guys? You're the experts.
That sounds like a great Dustin topic.
Yeah, Dustin, do you want to explain what a swap contract is?
So a swap contract does a couple of things. First, what you do is you go to a contract, you kind of log in with your wallet, with your Ethereum wallet, and what you do is you execute a swap. Now, when you execute a swap, there are a couple of things you need to do. One is that you need to approve the amount first, because the way the Ethereum wallet works is the way the swap contract tends to work is that there's an allowance of how many tokens you're going to swap. So you set the amount of tokens that you're going to allow the wallet to use, and then after that, you have to actually do the swap. So you tend to have 2 approvals, and then you agree to the swap. You have to pick the currency that you're going to swap to. Normally, the swap contract will tell you an estimate of what the fees will be, and then you execute the swap, and then you get the other token. So you might start with Ethereum, and then maybe you want to swap it to a stable coin, a DAI, or USDC, or USDT, and then you execute that swap. And then there are a few settings you need to set, like slippage, what kind of fees you want, which tells the contract how highly you want to prioritize this transaction against every other contract.
All right. Anybody have, that was great. Anybody have anything you want to add to that? Josh? Sonal?
I have a follow-up silly question. That's my job here. But does every crypto transaction involve a swap contract?
Not necessarily. I would say that the way that Ethereum works is it's kind of a wide open space, more or less, where it was meant to be a virtual, I mean, like pseudo Turing complete, in the sense that you can pretty much build anything that the code allows you to do. So you can do swaps, you can do loans, you can do really complex things like flash loans, which is within the same block. And it's almost like time travel where I will borrow this, do this transaction within the same block of time. And if the transaction can't execute, then I'll never make the loan at all. So it can be very simple, but it's kind of like money Legos. If you have a Lego that does this one thing, if the logic works out, you can actually stack a lot of transactions together and you can actually execute them together if you want. But it comes down to the complexity. It comes down to whether all the preconditions of every transaction would work.
Yeah, I think it is definitely a fundamental piece. But it's part, they're part of the Ethereum network, but they're not necessarily part of the core of Ethereum, if that makes sense. Like there's many different ways to swap coins, so it's kind of like, choose the one you like, and some are going to have different features and different liquidity and different tokens available within these contracts and things. So about piecing, the piece of Lego you want in that actually completes that. But the idea of a swap, the concept of it, is certainly very fundamental to a lot of what you're doing on Ethereum. And similar, if you go and buy a product, and I'm buying a product from America, it's probably going to get converted to CAD when I go to pay for it in the traditional sense. Well, when you're interacting with different things on the Ethereum network and you don't have what's necessary, swap contracts allow it to actually be seamlessly seem like I have what's necessary, because it's just going to kind of convert it as a part of the process of interacting with it.
So I've kind of shared my screen here and I'm going to one of the platforms through which you can swap. So you can do a really simple swap, which is like, sell 1 ETH and get 1 sushi, for example. But that's a straight swap. That's, not setting your price. That's doing it right now. But you can also do advanced swaps like a limit swap, which is like, I only want to sell 1 ETH for sushi when the price is a certain price. So maybe when the price is 2% higher or something like that. And then you can do something like DCA, which is, I want to do this transaction over how many minutes, and basically you can do you can set, like I said, complex transactions. You can do a stop loss, you can do a take profit, and this is all like in one chain on Ethereum L1. You can even do a cross chain swap here where you can take Ethereum L1 tokens and then you swap them onto, let's say, a L2 into an L2 token on another chain. So this is kind of like how you can do cross-chain swaps, depending on the complexity of what you want to do. You can do simple things, or you can stack more complex things on top of it.
And I guess this is kind of why this topic was popular amongst those who voted. I think it's something that I would say 99% of the people who have interacted with the Ethereum network have interacted with the swap contract. And most of us do it fairly blindly, not even really paying attention to all the different options that are going by as we blindly sign our contracts on our ledger and other hardware devices. So it's an interesting contract to take a look at what's actually going on under the hood. On one of these, not necessarily, all of them. We're not going to review all of them today, but what happens in a swap contract, especially what Dustin was just showing. Simple concept to convert this into this, but there's a significant amount under the hood that actually accomplishes all of these tasks. So we'll see if our tool today can help us demystify some of this. And see if it's still complete chaos to us as we take a look.
Isn't it kind of ironic that one of the things that currency change for us is like bartering back and forth and having to exchange one thing for another, but we're still kind of here in that we're swapping different types of assets and need somebody else to agree that they're willing to swap that asset. I mean, it might be in this case a third party, but still, you're basically saying, hey, I've got this apple. Will you exchange it to me for a peach? But instead, I've got ETH. Exchange it to me for sushi or whatever it is. So it's interesting that we've got so many advancements and yet we're still kind of doing something similar because it's just a need for humans. But obviously a lot more
some smart person once described the different tokens and different assets as similar to language, and that there are many languages. Sometimes some languages are just better at expressing certain topics, and some assets are just better at dealing with certain things. So it makes sense to speak that asset now and then. That was Andreas Antonopoulos.
That is such a good. That's such a good example. I like that. Cool.
All right.
Okay. So Josh, our fearless leader, is going to screen share.
I am not the leader.
What we can do.
I will lead this.
You're fearless. You're a fearless leader for this session. How does that sound?
So
we pledge our allegiance to you.
Thanks.
All right.
As is required, obviously, as is required. All right, I'm gonna just go through the same preamble that I went through on the first couple of them, which is one, we're not sponsored by any of these tools. We get nothing if you use these tools. We're just using them because we think they're gonna provide some value and let us do a fun little live stream. So today we're using Cursor. We'll probably be using models from Anthropic, from OpenAI, maybe some other vendors as well. We get nothing from these organizations. Believe it or not, SpaceX has not come knocking on our door and requested that we do this talk on swaps. So please don't feel compelled to use any of these tools based on our recommendation. There's many out there. I'm using Cursor today because I think it's a good tool for kind of showing your work. I think things like Claude are really cool. All these different agentic tools are really fun, but a lot of them are kind of black boxes. You tell it to do something and it does it. Cursor allows us to dig a little deeper into the work product and actually show you what we're generating, what we're seeing, ask questions about it, and that's what I think is valuable for this particular lesson. And as Jessica mentioned, just because you have these tools doesn't mean you can do something that will be remotely safe. We will technically probably make something that's accidentally deployable, but we should know not to deploy it. This is Cursor. It is a mixture of an IDE and which are like a classic development tool. It's what you generally write code in, do compiling, do testing, debugging, all sorts of stuff. But it has these nice little agent features built in. So along the left, we're going to see our files as we make them. Over on the right, we see this classic like agent chat box, which you'll recognize from any of the chat GPTs or from the Google doing things you don't want it to do, or all sorts of various stuff. And then in the middle here, we'll see files as we kind of generate them. I've talked about it before, but I'll go through it quickly. There's a couple different modes when we talk to the agents here that are important. First mode is agent mode. That means like, Jesus, take the wheel, let's go. We're going to create or it's going to be writing to files, making requests, doing all sorts of things. We haven't given it any guardrails to not do things. So it's just going to kind of do whatever it wants. And that's certainly something to consider. It might go access other files on your computer. It might go read some sensitive documents. Like, you got to be a little bit careful about the agent thing. It's kind of free range. It's going to do what it does. Or it's at least going to mess up, if you're not careful, the files in this workspace. So you got to be a little careful with it, but you do need to use it sometimes. Plan mode is a little bit more like, hey, let's just talk this out. I don't want you going to change things. Maybe you can do some lookups on the internet to kind of get your bearings, but I don't want you editing things. Let's just talk about this for a bit. It's a very valuable feature. It's pretty much where we spend a lot of our time. And if you're using these tools, be it this, Claude, whatever, plan mode should pretty much be your normal kind of default stance that you start in, not agent mode, in my opinion. I'm going to skip the other two. Yeah,
can I dig into that a little more? I think part of the reason that plan mode is important as well is that unless you are on, an unlimited token budget, plan mode is useful for ensuring that the tokens that are being spent well, because it's very easy for the agent to start going crazy and sometimes in directions you didn't intend. So plan mode is a good way of setting scopes, setting goals, setting objectives, and making sure that you are using your tokens exactly on what you intended to do, rather than it freewheels and then you use up a bunch of tokens and achieve nothing.
Yes, that's a very, very good point. And it is comically easy to achieve nothing. I heard someone compare this technology in general to a slot machine, in that you kind of pull the lever, tell the agent to do something, and sometimes good work comes out and sometimes it doesn't. And you get the similar dopamine rush. So if you have an addictive personality, I would also caution against these tools, or at least recognize that there's a very similar dopamine hit going on when using these tools.
That's a really good example or comparison, Josh, and a very important warning.
Yeah, it's
for sure.
The third one I'm going to talk about, I'm going to skip debug and multitask for today again, which I think I'll do every time unless we finally just do an episode on it, is ask. Ask is great. Ask is like, let's just chat. Review the files and tell me about it. We're not making a plan. I just might have a question about the workspace. I might have a question about life in the universe. I might have a question about general Ethereum. Ask mode is just like, hey, let's just talk. Don't go changing files. Don't go crazy. We're just going to have this conversation. It's very similar to plan mode, except there's no work product at the end of it. When you're having that conversation in plan mode, you're creating a document together of where you're going to go next. When you're just working in ask mode, you're just shooting shit. Now, I have this just as a blank workspace. Let's start by just kind of setting this up. I've used the term AMM here because that's generally the type of swapping that gets used. There's kind of more simplistic swap contracts, and then these ones that actually function and ended up being kind of the winning ones. Maybe someone wants to describe that as I write out the rest of this thing. I don't come to this prepared whatsoever. That way you get the legitimate experience of kind of fumbling around this technology along with me.
Well, I think that's important. If we had this whole thing planned out exactly what to do, then that's not how it is in real life. Like, you're using AI as a tool to learn. And if you already know everything, then you don't really need to be using it, right? So it's, I think, our expectation, our plan that we're going to fumble around a bit, which is realistic, and why I think this is useful. I'm trying to see, can everyone see this? I guess I should check and see on YouTube if you can read it close enough. Okay, I think that's probably better, Josh. Okay, cool. And I
totally forgot to zoom in.
That's fine. I just was looking up the videos of Andreas that you brought up earlier about money as a language. I totally forgot about those. I'm going to put some of them in the chat, but yeah, currency as a language. It was interesting. So I'm glad that you reminded us of that, Josh. So I wanted
Josh,
to point out as I'm reading this, you're just asking questions as things come to your head. This is not like a pre-planned everything. You're using this to help you plan, which is why you're in plan mode.
Exactly.
Sorry, Dustin.
no, I think Josh asked someone to handle explaining what an AMM is while he does this, right?
Oh, I missed that. Great. Okay, why don't you do that? I just explained what was happening in general. Thanks, Dustin.
No worries. So, with an AMM is kind of something that's needed within swap contracts because what it does and what it stands for is automated market maker. Now, to understand that, you kind of have to understand kind of how trading works. So the thing about trading, especially when people have prices that they want, if you're talking about a order book where there are limit order trades, there sometimes is a distance between the price that everyone on the order book wants. Someone wants a better price for ETH, someone wants a better price for sushi. Let's just say that this is the swap pair that we're talking about. What happens if there's no one that, if the desired price doesn't meet, then there's this gap where you don't have liquidity and then no trades happen. So what an automated market maker does is that it's people that basically give they allocate tokens of both sides of this swap pair, and they say use my tokens as as liquidity for these swaps. So what that achieves is that, and this is normally done in traditional markets by actual market makers. They get paid very well to do it. There is a small arbitrage, but because they do a lot of volume, that's how they make their money. And it's normally something that, in traditional finance, not mere mortals never get to touch. You need to be a very well-resourced firm to do it. But what crypto kind of enables is it enables the user to be the market maker. And what you do is that you allocate your tokens to this swap pool, and then you can sometimes set, I want to allow my tokens to be used for swaps within this range, and that's kind of the range I want to play in. So an automated market maker is a component that allows swaps to happen and for liquidity to be provided so that the swap pair is a liquid swap pair that happens and you don't have to wait for orders on both sides to always match up.
Awesome.
So like basically we use AMMs in DeFi to automate token trading, to trade automatically in DeFi. Is that a simple way to explain it? Is I know that often when we try to simplify things, it's like one word or two is misleading, so it's hard to. So like Dustin, your explanation was a lot better than what I just said. But if we want to like condense it to something small, I think that's a good way to explain it, but it lacks a lot of the nuance that you gave in the specifics, Dustin.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that previously, market making was a complex activity. In fact, for new IPOs, for example, whenever during any IPO, market makers are often engaged to ensure that there is liquidity for the new launch because most of the market doesn't have it yet. So market makers are often hired to say, okay, help provide liquidity for a certain period until enough of the public has this stock so that there's actually organic liquidity for this stock. But if there was no organic liquidity for the stock, then the prices could become very unpredictable. So market makers do serve that purpose in traditional markets, and then for crypto, AMMs exist to fill in the void of market makers for that. Even though a lot of big players do AMM as well, they're traditional market makers in crypto in that sense, but basically providing tokens to a liquidity pool is a way for you to participate as a market maker within swap contracts.
Luckily,
Awesome.
I think this very well explains the fact that although sometimes it feels simple when you go to a website like SushiSwap or Uniswap, and there's just like a little thing that says, convert this into that. There's a bit of an iceberg of things going on under the hood and behind the scenes that you can also participate in as a kind of a different user. So there's users who participate from just the swapping standpoint, and then there's users who participate in the kind of back end side that actually provides the liquidity that these things use. So regardless though of what side you're kind of entering these smart contracts at, I think being able to understand how they work can be extremely valuable to understanding where you're vulnerable working with them, understanding where things might go wrong, and hopefully we kind of see that today. So I've asked my bot here. Now I'm just right now one thing I didn't show
Sorry,
this time.
Josh.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, Josh. Before you move on, do you think it makes sense for me to share, let's say, SushiSwap's create liquidity positions thing to explain the AMM part a bit more, or should we just move on?
Oh, let's do it.
Okay, so I'll share screen. Oh wait, I can't share screen while you're sharing screen. Sorry.
Screen.
Yep. So you see here, we have managed liquidity positions, and there are two different options here. I want to create a position. I want to incentivize a pool. So you can say I want to create a position, and then this is the swap pair that I want to create. So let's say ETH and DAI, and then it's got a fee tier. So this is what I mean by you can choose how you want to allocate your tokens, and basically the fee tier that you want. So um, best for most pairs. So it depends on the kind of fees that you want, how much volatility you're happy for your tokens to be used as liquidity for, and yeah, the range in which you want to play, what price range you want to provide your tokens for liquidity, for example. So this is kind of a very simple idea of how you're providing liquidity, and you have to provide some places allow you to provide only one token, but most places give you the option of providing tokens on both sides of the trade. Because if you only provided DAI, for example, then you wouldn't be able to participate in swaps that require ETH. So most people provide a ratio of tokens. Most of the time, they do equal value allocations of both sides of the swap, so that they can basically participate in both sides of the trade.
Yeah, I mean, there's just like you got two buckets of tokens. You got like, ETH and USDC. If you want to supply to it, you have to put your tokens into both buckets so they kind of stay even. When someone, puts ETH in here, takes this one out, this bucket goes down a little bit, this bucket goes up a little bit. And what that actually means is technically the value of what's in those two buckets has changed. The quantity of tokens has changed based on the swap, but it also means the value of the ratio of those has kind of changed, which is kind of its own little price discovery. Now we're getting into even more complicated things. So let's go on and back to our environment.
Let's go back to the more simple to understand thing, which is coding as opposed to swaps.
Exactly.
We're going to use this to understand swaps. So again, I was in plan mode and I've asked it. There's a lot of words here. And obviously, if I was just learning this, I'd be like, oh crap, I don't know what any of this. I don't know what a Uniswap V2 pair is. Why do I care about this? Like, okay, so UQ 112 times 112. Like, realistically, you're going to be like, I don't know what this means. Why am I doing this? This is a failing thing. What you have to be able to work past for this process is to just accept that some things, one, you don't need to know, and it might be telling you too much information. Or two, if you really do, if you have like a just morbid curiosity, then you can always be like, okay, you know, you got me. I'm going to actually even open a whole other chat. What is Ethereum? Please explain like I don't understand basic anything. We're gonna switch over to ask mode. I don't know what it, like sometimes on these calls I get to fake not knowing what something is. This one's legitimate. I have no idea what this is. Why does this exist? Store decimal numbers. Okay, cool.
Well, that's
Okay,
what
you
makes it
probably
so
don't.
powerful, Josh. Powerful and scary.
Okay,
Um,
so
yeah.
this is just I guess a little bit. This did not explain this like I was stupid. So first of all, it failed at this mission, in my opinion. I don't expect most people to know what floating point means. Unsafe. Like, why is a number unsafe? That doesn't make any sense. But now that I see this, I at least understand floating point numbers in computer science are a very difficult problem. Because if you divide 10 by 3 and you get that 3 3 3 3 3 3 3 3 3 always repeating, never ending, there gets to a point when something needs to decide what to do about that never ending number. And in a financial system, that never ending number can have big implications, large implications, depending on what you end up deciding to do with it. So plain like I'm stupid, please. So makes sense. But we haven't even got to the like swapping feature yet. It's just like, okay, wait a minute. Why is this stupid? But this makes sense. A swap is very getting the amounts you're actually swapping accurate is incredibly important. So I like how you use the word boom. Apparently stupid people like to hear the word boom. So this is what has decided to do it. Okay, super simple. Ethereum just stores numbers like this. You can't store numbers like this. So it had to make up their own way of storing numbers like this. Right. Okay, we're going to get out of this sidebar and just move along with our life. Now, I was in plan mode here. So here's the plan that it started to create. Again, I just asked it, like, let's set up this workspace to learn about swaps and AMMs. If you remember from our previous talk about ERC20s, it has recognized that, oh, if we're talking about swaps, we also need tokens to swap. So it's actually including the creation of a token in our little lesson here today, which I think is great. Sol files are Solidity files, not Solana. The main programming language that smart contracts are written in is called Solidity. So when you see these .sol files, that's what we're looking at. And then this plan just kind of goes on. Now, one thing to note, these plans can be important, especially if you are using this in the development process of complex systems or even simple systems. These plans can be critical. In this particular application where we're just trying to learn, this plan is more for it than it is for us. So looking at it and not understanding everything it's saying is fine. So we're actually just going to say, build this plan. And it's going to start going through these to-dos it made down here and setting up our environment, which you can already see on the left kind of starting to show up. So I'll kind of repeat that. A lot of the times as we're using this tool for learning, things will come across that we don't understand because that's where we're at. We don't understand these things. It's fine to not understand what it's talking about, but don't be afraid to ask it. Go into more detail on that. It's about kind of like pulling on these different threads and going down these rabbit holes that you find these valuable information. And maybe you didn't understand that normal integers or numbers without decimals are easy for computers, and numbers with decimals are extremely unnecessary, are extremely complicated. But now you've kind of learned that lesson, and now you might understand why there's added complexity about dealing with weird numbers. Oh, might have clicked something. Stop. Okay, so it's actually given us a reading order. Oh, so it starts with the token. Like, hey, you might want to know what a token is. And then you might want to look at the AMM. So let's do it. Let's listen to it. I'm gonna close my agent window over here, try and get us some more space. So this is the mock ERC20 that is created for us. Does mock exist? Okay, I'm gonna tell it to keep all. There we go. No.
Unsurprisingly, mock ERC20 does exist, but it's not a pre-deployed standard contract. It's a boilerplate smart contract. But of course, everything seems to exist.
Right. Cool. So it's 100% possible we've stolen that contract from something. And we have to hope that they didn't put anything nefarious in there, or they're not upset at the fact that we're stealing the contract. We'll find out.
Oh wait, it might be ERC20 mock. I think it goes the other way. So
perfect.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm seeing both. Never mind. Sorry. Well, I guess I just showed how confusing this can be and how many different things there are out there to look at.
Okay. So we're looking at our mock ERC20. A lot of this hopefully looks familiar from the last one. We've got that transfer function where we transfer, where are we transferring this asset to? How much are we transferring? Transfer from, if we want to transfer from an address that's not directly ours, but we want to but we've been authorized or approved to make that transfer. Mint, if this contract has no mock tokens, $mock, and we want to mock each other, then we can mint mockings, and then we can mock each other by transferring these mocks around. Now, I did this last one, so I won't get into this too much, but just to kind of stick it out, I'm gonna select all of this, and I'm gonna choose add to chat. I explained it a little bit, but I won't be there the next time you're doing this. So let's ask it. Explain this. Oh, it's comparing it to a spreadsheet, saying, hey, we store these values. This is basically all of the supply and how much everyone has. Events. They announce when things happen. So yeah, this is the exact same thing we went over last time, so I don't want to dwell on this one too much, but now we've looked at our token. So we have our token, the exact same thing we looked at last time. And now let's look at our tiny AMM file, because this is the new exciting one. Okay. Now, describe. So again, I've copied the code from my file here, and I'm just gonna do this at a very high level, like I was 5. I hope this that describes it with like train lemonade stand. All right, here we go. Okay, so vending machine isn't really a lemonade stand, but we tried. Let's see how this goes. One basket of whole apples, one bananas, lets people trade apples for bananas. What the fuck does this have to do with a lemonade stand? Bit of a letdown, that's all right. The machine's memory. Basically, oh, this is interesting. Shares. So you kind of get a different token when you put assets into one of these things, which is the concept of a share. So it has to track that for this case. And then it also tracks like what a share represents on both. It's trying to explain balancing of the pools. It's not doing a terrible job. What can you do with the machine? Add liquidity. So this is what Dustin was just going over, the process of adding liquidity and the kind of different options. In the interface he was showing, there was a lot of different nuance and complexity to how that system works. These things have evolved significantly over time, and this is a tiny AMM. So the feature set of this one is a little different, but the concept is the same. The swaps can't work unless people have deposited assets into this system that can help support that swap. If I want to swap apples to oranges, but there's no apples and oranges in this engine, in this smart contract, and I put apples in, where are oranges going to come from? They can't be created out of thin air. So thus, it wouldn't work. So this add liquidity feature is kind of critical to this whole process. And, looking at it, if you're not a programmer, maybe this looks horrible to read and means nothing to you. But if you kind of sound things out, it's not so bad. My first token, which it described up here, is my apples, how this is working, where it's going. It's still a little complicated, but we can dig into it if we really want to. Taking your stuff back, also important. We talked about putting liquidity in. You can also take out your liquidity from these things. That's kind of the whole purpose. But when you take it out, if I put in 2 apples, 2 oranges, and swaps have happened, I might get, 1 apple, 3 oranges instead when I take it out, because the pool has kind of changed, the value of things have changed. My shares represent a different amount on either side, depending on where the swaps went. And, maybe that wasn't completely clear to you as a person using these systems at first, but by kind of digging into these, like maybe we should ask it that question. And this is where I think the real value in even non-developers using these tools is. These are things you interact with during a bull market, on a daily, during a bear market, you forget you have a wallet. But you are interacting with these things quite a bit. But
Josh, I'm sorry, but truer words have never been said. Bull market. I have a wallet. It's very DeFi of you. Okay, sorry.
Thanks. No worries. I try and make it at least funny and sad. So in this case, like, wait a minute, this isn't doing what I think. We get to ask it, we get to look at code, we get to understand what actually happens here. In this case, it's telling me, no, I don't necessarily get exactly what I put in, but I get a proportional slice of whatever there is now, which is a critical piece of information to understand when adding liquidity to an AMM, because it can sometimes go south in a way that you don't want. You end up with a lot of a token that you're not interested in anymore, and little of a token that you are interested in anymore. So this is talking about how it's actually, you know, the shares that you have times the amount of tokens that are there. And the shares you have don't change, but what the share represents does. So this actually does a really good job of explaining kind of how AMMs are working behind the hood. I'm very, very happy with this. And this is kind of the question here. Did you win or lose? Impermanent loss is the term that gets thrown around on this, which is like, you know, I got 200 apples and only 50 bananas, but whether or not that's good kind of depends on if bananas are hot right now and apples are hot right now.
Hot bananas. Yep.
Hot bananas, banana bread. Yeah, let's, sure. Walk me through demo. I don't know why there's an S in this, but we're gonna find out. Here's a nice thing that was just done, which is display the private key that it generated for me. That's good. So sorry everyone for the taxable event, but we are now all participating in this. It's explaining private key. Oh, it's making both our tokens for us. That's cool. Taka and Takba. It'd be nice if it kept the apples and oranges. We use apples and oranges for the demo. May as well keep this demo lively. Any questions while we wait? Any thoughts? No, Dustin, maybe.
Oh, I thought Dustin was about to say something.
I did unmute, but then I realized that I didn't want the question to take up a lot of time, so I stopped.
Fair. Oh my goodness, it's already 52. Yeah. Okay. Well, we are kind of walking through it. Let's do a step-by-step swamp. We're gonna do a step-by-step swamp.
Drain the swamp.
Drain the
A hot
swamp.
banana swamp.
Or the reflecting pool as it might be.
Okay, walking through. Okay, we're doing it. Oh God. Okay. So assume the pool starts with 10,000 apples and 10,000 oranges. First, we have to approve. So this would be me, you know, clicking on my wallet, like, okay, I'm going to approve on my apples that I'm allowed to spend them. And then I don't know why I'm swapping Ether. That's a little weird. Doesn't sound right. I feel like this is trying to steal 1,000 Ether from me, but this is also why we need to be careful. And it's
That's
charging a
such a good
fee.
point, Josh. Like you're like, I
That's
feel like this is off, but if you're not familiar with this, you know, private key's been out there, like
Why are the approvals for Ether instead of Apple's in order? Catching it in a lie. Weird. I don't necessarily believe that, but it's interesting.
I think you
Could
should
be
ask
true.
it to you should ask it to insult Kim Jong-un.
Which one am I using? That's a common way of seeing if North Korean hackers are trying to mess with you, is by asking it to insult the leader. So what it's saying is why it does that is it just uses Ether because Ether does these numbers in Ethereum are insane. Because you get numbers like this and no one knows how to pronounce it. And you have to deal with it. So it's saying that if you use the term Ether here, then it understands to take this number and multiply it by this number. I don't know about that, but I can keep pressing it, but now I've only got 5 minutes, so I'm going to ignore that one and move on for now. I don't actually think this is trying to steal from me, but I do find it interesting. Oh, good, we've changed it. Perfect. Because I called it out, it's now making a new thing that does the exact same thing called fruit, which I feel better about. Now it looks better to me. We're exchanging fruit. Oh my God. That swamps on the brain. So as we're waiting for this to load, again, I hope this is interesting and helpful. I know it kind of goes all over the place because we intentionally don't plan it to kind of just see where this stuff takes us to hopefully give a similar experience that you'll have. It's a little bit of like, you know, enjoy the ride and kind of similar to clicking random on Wikipedia, like what am I going to learn today? And I hope that's a good thing. I hope that's something that you're excited about and interested in.
I think this is good, Josh, because it's very similar to what we would be if you're interested in using AI to review or look at or whatever with smart contracts, this is what you'd be doing. So this makes sense to me. I also want some fruit now, but other than that, I think it's been a very good teaching exercise or learning exercise.
This is what, so when you actually send that transaction, you know, when you click all the buttons on your ledger and send it, theoretically a swap is executing this function in this case. On different networks, on different smart contracts, it might be something different, but in this case, you know, it's calling this particular one. In there, that's doing some safety checks, making sure I actually have the amount, making sure it has the amount. And then it's going to try and kind of figure out where we're going. Okay, we're exchanging apples for oranges, and this is the amount we're hoping for. Now we're sending funds from our wallet into the smart contract. The smart contract literally store the funds, or at least, you know, theoretically, they have the funds associated with them. They're not actually holding it themselves, but in the token contract, it's now being stored and associated with the smart contract instead of with the wallet. And then get amount, we're figuring it out. It's doing all the math to figure out how much 10,000 apples gets you. It's doing some calculations about slippage, which if you didn't understand what slippage is, this would probably be another thing where you would go, wait a minute, explain slippage to me, which would be very valuable to understand if you're using these systems. And then it updates that spreadsheet and transfers the token back to my wallet that we've done the swap for. And then it tells the world, hey, this happened. We can see our values might be different than we expected. I wanted 10,000 orange. Instead, I got 906 orange because of slippage and fees. And now I have a better understanding by loosely reading this smart contract of how the system is working and how the calculations may not surprise me next time I go to interact with these systems.
Just wanted to add that I found this really interesting because I didn't know a lot about swap contracts, and it's a good example of how they are one of the many examples of specific concepts in the Ethereum ecosystem, one of the many. And that one term involves finance, code, legal aspects that we didn't even dare get into, risks, user behavior, and just so many components that even a concept like that we can talk about for over an hour if we were able to. And then you add the ability to build with AI onto it, and it does add some spookiness of what people might be building out there, and an even greater need to understand what you're using and what you're building. And not that we needed more complexity, but it is here, so we might as well take the time to dive into these topics and understand them as best as we can.
Wholeheartedly agree. Yep, absolutely. This is really cool. And one of the things I love about using AI for something like this is being able to ask questions to it directly. What does this mean? And to then, also do your own research a little bit on the outside so you make sure AI is not saying anything that you shouldn't believe. But there's just so many capabilities with it. It's incredible and scary, but mostly incredible. Or mostly scary. I'm not sure yet. It's a toss-up, but I love it. Okay, Josh, that was great. Thank you for going through this with us and looking at it. I hope people have a better idea of how swap contracts work and what you can do with AI to help explain what's happening underneath the covers of Ethereum. Any concluding remarks? Anything anyone wants to follow up on related to what we just went through?
I think I'll just add that if anyone watching in our community or outside of it has suggestions for specific topics like this one that you'd be interested in watching us break down in this way, I think it was actually such a cool way to learn about it, was watching through Josh building something through AI and assessing things, and just to reach out to our community so we can add it to the list. Like, I had looked up what swap contracts are on YouTube just to see if there were what else is out there, and this may be the only video, or we'll see, maybe I'm missing some. But I think that just goes to show that there's so many topics that we can cover that people are using or may be using without knowing it. So we'd be happy to learn together or share what we know.
Absolutely, Sonal. Yes. This was, I think, fun and interesting and educational, which is what C4 is all about. So thank you all for joining. Josh, thank you for walking us through this. Dustin, thanks for doing some screen sharing on your end to help illuminate what we're going through. Sonal, great questions, and we will see you next time. So thank you all for joining. Appreciate it. All right. Bye, guys. Okay.